Hey everyone, it's the Ioniq guy. Today I want to talk to you guys about a couple things, winter range as well as winter mode. And if you own a 2022 Ioniq 5 or EV6 that hasn't received a battery preconditioning update or was manufactured prior to the changeover when that became standard from the factory, then your car still has winter mode. And there's some confusion about what it does, and I talked to one of Hyundai's EV drivetrain engineers, and he kind of clarified things for me a little bit. So I want to share that with you guys today. So if you live in a cold climate and drive an Ioniq 5 or EV6, then you're going to want to stay tuned for this one. So this video is mostly for all of you people who got your cars over this past spring, summer, fall, where temperatures are fairly warm. You're going to be a little surprised when you find out how much range you actually have in the middle of winter. So right now it's not even that cold out. My car's sitting at about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and I have a projected range of 184 miles at 80%. So that's a lot less than even just 2 months ago. This past summer, when I would charge up to 80%, I would regularly see 215, 220. So you're talking right there a 15, 20% drop in range. And we're not even into the middle of winter. So you need to recognize that in the wintertime, you're not going to have your summer range. You're not even going to be close. When I would charge to 100% this past summer when I was about to leave for a couple road trips, I saw a projected range of just about 305 miles. So you're talking at least 33% to possibly 50% in worst case scenario range reduction in the colder months, depending on where you live, what the average temperature is. Sometimes in the wintertime here in Connecticut, we'll have freak stretches of a week or two where we have temperatures that hover around an average of 15, 20 degrees. But for the most part, our winters are fairly mild in the 20s, 30s. So this absolutely is not a worst case scenario. For you people who live up in Canada, northern Canada, Minnesota, northern Maine, I mean, you guys really know what a cold winter is like, and we don't even have an idea of what that's like down here. And I experienced this firsthand last winter when about a week after I purchased my car, I decided to go up to Boston for a concert. So getting to Boston for me is about 175 miles, which is about 87 miles each way. And so I decided to do it. We only had EVs at this point in time. My girlfriend already had her Kona electric, so we were an EV household and we had to do it. So we set out on our first mini little road trip, and I charged the car to 100%, and it projected I had about 190 miles of range, if I'm not mistaken. So I had a 15-mile buffer. What I didn't know is that a cold front was moving in that night, and temperatures were going to drop by about 15 to 20 degrees from where they were when I left the house. So at about 4 or 5 o'clock when we decided to leave, it was 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees C, and didn't think much of it. Got on the highway, set the adaptive cruise control, put it in eco mode, and we just cruised along up to Boston. So we went to the show. We saw The War on Drugs that night. It was a great show. So when we left the concert, it was about 15 degrees. So we got in the car, cranked up the heat because it was ice cold, and did the same thing. Got back on the Mass Pike, set the cruise control to, I think, 70 or 72. Had the heat at about 72 degrees in auto level 1, so just let it do its thing. So we get on the highway. I've got Waze going, and it's telling me what my estimated distance to get home is. And I'm comparing that with the range indicator in the car. So we get about 20, 30 miles in, and I'm starting to notice the delta between what Google Maps is saying to get home versus the range indicator is saying are getting closer and closer every mile. And this is when I start to have a little bit of a panic, a first-time EV owner panic. So I knew there were some things I could do to combat this range drop. I knew that I could turn the heat down even more, so I took it out of auto mode and I put it down to just fan speed 1, which is even slower than auto level 1. We also turned the temperature down to, I think, 67, 66 degrees, and we put on our coats just to stay a little bit warmer. And as you can imagine, when you're driving at 70 miles an hour in 15-degree temperatures, the car is just dissipating heat like crazy. So even that, having it fan speed level 1 wasn't enough to keep the cabin at the set point. So the inside of the car was dropping temperature, so having our jackets on was a must. Kept going, did another 20, 30 miles. So that's when I really started to worry, because I then saw that we had about another 20 miles to go or something like that, and range indicator was saying we had like 22, 23 miles, and so I said, I gotta do something different here. So that's when I lowered my speed down to about 65 miles per hour, which I never do. I'm always at about 70, 73. And we just chugged along. It was late at night, so we weren't holding anybody up. We drove in the slow lane. And we eventually got to the exit to get off for my house, and we had, I believe, 2 miles of remaining range. And that was my first trip. Barely made it home. But knowing what I know now, I know that the car does have a buffer beyond zero of about 9 miles. So either way, if I didn't reduce the speed down to 65, we probably still would have made it. The biggest consumer of energy there was probably going to be the climate control, just because it was so damn cold that night that it just could barely keep up with the heat loss driving through that 15-degree air. So that was a big shock to me. I was not expecting my range to be only about 175 miles in the middle of winter. So that's my cautionary tale about what to expect in wintertime. So just keep in mind that weather is a big factor when driving in the winter. 32 degrees is a lot different than 15, 10, 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So you really got to think about that. Check the forecast if it's going to rain, if it's going to snow. Both of those situations are also going to eat into your range, because you're creating more friction between the tires and the road, and you're also pushing the car through rain that might be driving towards the car, so it is some resistance towards the car. So these are just things to keep in mind. Granted, we are now getting much more DC fast charging infrastructure, so that is a positive. We have more options. I could have stopped in Auburn, Mass to charge at the Electrify America station, but it was 11:30 at night. I had to work the next day. I really didn't want to stop. And knowing that I couldn't precondition my battery, I knew it was going to be a little while to charge, but I did only need 5 or 10 minutes to make sure I have enough to get home, but I just didn't feel like stopping, and I kind of wanted to live on the edge that night, apparently. So my suggestion to all of you is, if you do need to eke out every mile of range in the wintertime, make sure you have your climate control set as low as you can comfortably handle. For me, that's about 65, 66 degrees before I'm actually chilly. So lower that, lower your fan speed, and then you're going to have to drop your driving speed. So as the temperature drops, your tire pressure drops as well. And if you weren't aware of this, this is something that everybody should be checking, not just EV owners, anybody who drives any car. Once temperatures drop, air pressure in your tire drops. I've seen 5, 10 PSI drop in pressure in my tires in the past, so make sure you check your tire pressure often during the wintertime. Luckily, we have TPMS sensors that display a reading of what your tire pressures are at. And for our cars, you want to keep the tires at 36 PSI. And you could even increase the tire pressure a little more than that. Something that EV owners have been doing for a decade now is increasing their tire pressure 5 PSI over what is dictated by the plate on the car. And some people claim that that gets you a little bit more mileage. I have not actually tested that theory, but it seems to be kind of the collective agreement, is that increased tire pressure is better for range and efficiency. So before you head out on a long drive, make sure you check your tire pressure. So those are my tips for extending your range in the colder months. Let me know down below if I forgot anything. What do you guys do in the colder months to eke out every little bit of electricity from that battery pack for range? So in the second portion of this video, I want to talk about winter mode. And winter mode really only applies to Ioniq 5s and EV6s that haven't gotten a battery preconditioning update or haven't had it installed from the factory. So under the EV settings screen, you click on the little gear, and then you'll see a tab for something called winter mode. And there's a lot of confusion about what winter mode actually does. I see this question posted almost daily on Reddit and the Facebook groups. People think that the winter mode is battery preconditioning. It is not battery preconditioning for charging. What winter mode does is it intelligently elevates the temperature of the battery just enough that it prevents the car from limiting how much power the battery can discharge. So winter mode isn't about input power. It is about output power to the electric motors. It is also about maintaining the battery at a comfortable temperature to prevent degradation. It is in no way about charging speed. Just keep that in mind. So I did speak with one of Hyundai's drivetrain engineers several months ago. So the engineer I spoke with says, winter mode is a passive thermal regulation strategy that allows drivers to avoid experiencing discharge limits imposed by the BMS at low temperatures. The BMS is the battery management system. It's not a good thing for the battery to be charged and discharged at full power in low temperatures, so discharging and charging is cut to preserve the life of the battery. Imagine driving below freezing up a graded highway in the winter. As a customer, you would experience discharge limitations to preserve the battery. In reality, you wouldn't exactly know why unless the car tells you. To keep people from having that negative experience, the battery would warm up a little to improve the performance and avoid the situation altogether. The only penalty is expended energy from the high voltage battery pack to heat up. So the consequence is a loss in range. It's a tough compromise between range and drivability. So something that I think he forgot to mention in what he told me was that due to that elevated battery temperature, it will assist in DC charging speeds just a bit, but it's not battery preconditioning to the point where you're going to be able to get 235 kilowatts into the battery pack. So any single degree of elevated temperature is going to put the car just that much closer to being able to accept another bump up in charging power. So yes, it might affect DC charging performance just a little bit, but it's not what battery preconditioning does. So winter mode is more or less just to preserve performance so that you don't get a squishy accelerator. I would imagine that when the car is power limited, you would feel kind of like you're in eco mode. So let's say you were towing a trailer with your Ioniq 5. You're going up a really steep incline. There's a lot of wind resistance on the trailer. You might have your pedal all the way down in that situation, which is trying to pull all 239 kilowatts of power out of that battery. So this is going to try and maintain that power that you need if you're accelerating up a hill with a trailer or something. If maintaining your driving performance isn't critical to you though, turn winter mode off and you'll get better range. The battery is still going to maintain a temperature that's not going to allow it to be destroyed by the cold temperature. So if you really need extra mileage, I would suggest turning winter mode off if you're willing to give up a little bit of power and acceleration in that regard. So with the temperatures dropping, I'm going to leave winter mode off in my car for a month or so, and I'm going to see if I can see that power limitation actually take place. Most of my driving here in central Connecticut is pretty flat. We don't have a ton of big mountains here. We do have some long stretches of highway at incline, so maybe on a really cold day, I'll take it out and kind of see what it does when you're going up in elevation for 5-10 miles or so. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to talk to you guys about what to expect in the winter with your Ioniq 5 or your EV6. So again, let me know down in the comments section, did I miss anything in terms of extending your driving range in the winter months? And let me know, how has your experience been with the Ioniq 5? Are you fine with the big drop in range? Do you long for more range? Honestly, I find that 175 miles of range in the wintertime is enough for me to do the things that I want to do. We don't usually vacation in the wintertime super far, so that's fine with me. I got no problems with it. So I also wanted to let you guys know I have decided to do a limited run of my wooden magnetic eyewear holders. So you can see here I have a maple version as well as a black painted version. I am only making about 34 of them just because they're time consuming to make, but I wanted to bring them back for the holiday season if you know another Ioniq 5 owner or you want to treat yourself to something. If you're somebody that respects wood, you might want this over the 3D printed plastic version that I make.
You don't respect wood.
I do respect wood. This is a low-grade wood.
So these are available on my Shopify store as well as Etsy for $30. There'll be a link in the video description. I appreciate you guys checking them out and appreciate all the business you guys have given me over the last year. It's pretty wild. I have sold over 350 eyewear holders so far this year. I've sold them to people in Australia, the Middle East, Scandinavia, South America. I mean, it's just wild to think that something I made is all over the planet right now. So thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.